Welcome to another episode of Digital Dexterity. I'm Wes McChristian, our Kentico Practice Director here at Americaneagle.com. Today, I'm joined by two wonderful guests in what we're hoping to be a Let's Talk Tech session. So, Chris, I'd love to pass it your way first. Would you mind doing a quick introduction for our listeners?
My name's Chris Hajjar. I've actually been implementing Kentico since about 2010. So seen quite a lot of things, seen a lot of evolution, not only in this product, but also, the space in general. So really excited to be here.
Great. And Sean, would you mind giving our listeners a quick introduction as well?
Sure. My name's Sean Wright. I'm a lead product evangelist at Kentico. I worked for about 10 years on the partner agency side, building .NET applications, working with client-side JavaScript architecture, and slowly moved into being kind of a solutions architect, and then jumped over to the Kentico side to move more into marketing, which has been an exciting adventure for me.
Maybe that'll be another episode for us.
Sure.
So great, guys. I'd love to have a conversation about Kentico and just your philosophy behind technology. We've seen the industry shift and change and flex and bend as a result of a lot of things that Microsoft is doing. And as a .NET driven content management system or digital experience platform, maybe Sean, maybe you start, kind of explain the background and philosophy behind Kentico as a .NET platform. Could we maybe start there?
Sure. Yeah. Fantastic. So Kentico as a company has been around for about 20 years now, and it was .NET based from the beginning, building on ASP.NET web forms, which some people might be familiar with. If your beard is a little more gray and longer.
Just called out right away.
Yeah.
Man.
For people who can't see, Chris sitting next to me has some gray in his beard. So,
some is an understatement, but thank you.
He just got lined up, though.
Yeah. So built on ASP.NET web forms, and has tracked with Microsoft's technology offerings over time, including adoption of the cloud with Azure about 7 or 8 years ago.
Right.
And now has adopted Microsoft's latest technology, .NET 5, 6, 7, 8 now, ASP.NET Core. So really, as a company, we have tracked along with the technology offerings from Microsoft, also incorporated some other cutting edge technologies. We can talk about those a little later too.
Yeah. And I would say too, like as a partner that implements, I think you guys have done a really good job of progressively adopting the standards that Microsoft is putting forth inside of the .NET ecosystem, even so far as to really set the stage for what we now have on the horizon. Well, I guess was it last week or the week before .NET 8?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And your wonderful experience by Kentico product, right? And you have successfully laid the groundwork in order to adopt the .NET 8 changes that are being driven by Microsoft, which I think is just like really cool, because there are other platforms in the market that have not put in the elbow grease that you guys have, right, for that adoption, which I think is just so cool.
Yeah, I think they've always stayed up on one of the, again, my career has been built on building Kentico implementations for people. And one of my, favorite things is that the software did a great job, like you said, of kind of following in .NET's footsteps without getting in your way, without blocking possible functionality or solutions that you're looking to build. It just complemented them rather than, a hurdle or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And like at the recent Connections event in Nashville, like one of the standout moments for me was actually Brian McKeever put a slide up on one of his presentations with like all of the Microsoft iterations as far back as, I think it was, I don't know if it was 20 years, but maybe 10. It was really interesting to see it framed up that way, which I think is cool. But let's maybe dive into the product itself. And Chris, I'd love your perspective on just kind of where we stand today, like kind of components and build philosophy, given your history with the product, .NET aside.
Yeah.
Tell us what you're excited about in Experience by Kentico.
The biggest for me, especially for, being a technologist for so long, is, again, they started this rebuild a few years ago and getting rid of all the legacy code, including older versions of .NET, and really building towards the future. And with our new architecture, namely around this content hub and things that myself and Sean will speak to. It really has enabled quicker paths to production. It's enabled, being able to headless capabilities, all that kind of stuff that was maybe unheard of or just not even an option for people years ago, are now easy for even non-technical people to use on their day-to-day basis and stuff like that.
Yeah. Sean, tell us what you're most excited about in the current state of technology with Experience by Kentico.
Yeah, so the first time that I started working with Experience by Kentico, I was still on the agency side, using it as potentially a product that my agency would be using for our clients.
Yeah.
And I went through the documentation and I was up and running in 5 minutes. And compared to both previous versions of our products and other products in the marketplace and the ecosystem, to me, it was just amazingly fast, amazingly easy to get started using the product. And so that barrier, which is something that affects developers and developers feel is a huge pain point when they can't get started quickly.
Yeah.
When either the tutorial, the documentation requires 500 steps and this bespoke customization and setup. When you can remove that barrier, you help developers feel productive and enabled, and they want to work with the product and they get excited coming back to it.
Sure.
And for me, that was the biggest takeaway for where this product is today, is that speed to feeling enabled and productive as a developer with the product.
And I'm just technical enough to be dangerous, right? If I'm coding your website, you're having a bad day, right? But like, I mean, give some of our listeners a sense of what barriers are you specifically describing here that would have been a blocker to not just the morale and motivation that you're describing, but also like time to code, time to market.
So there are key philosophies in the product strategy. One is to meet developers where they are. So what are they using today in terms of tool chain or technologies or languages? So we're using the latest version of .NET, C#. We are compatible with Docker for database. We can be stood up in a matter of minutes using .NET CLI project templates. And we sit on top of ASP.NET Core instead of replacing it. So if a developer is familiar with this very popular, common, highly performant, always updating technology stack, then becoming familiar with Experience by Kentico as a product is not going to be a stretch for them.
You don't have to unlearn. You just add on to the knowledge. And
if they already have that knowledge, then getting to a place where they feel like they understand us is not a stretch. It's just a few steps to get up and running. And when they look at their code, it's going to look like an ASP.NET Core application. It's not going to look like some bespoke vendor's product that you don't quite understand. It's ASP.NET Core at the foundation, and everything they can do with that technology stack, they can do with our product. There are no limitations there.
That's great.
I'm surprised, actually, you didn't bring up one of the barriers. What was the first computer you actually installed this on?
Yes. So this is a nice softball coming from Chris.
Yeah.
So in the past, years ago, Microsoft's technologies were built for Windows because that was the operating system that they delivered everything through.
Sure.
In about 2014, 2015, Microsoft realized they needed to be cloud first and allow any developer to work with their technology solutions.
Yeah.
And so that was that began the development of ASP.NET Core and modern .NET, which is cross-platform. So you can run .NET on Mac, Linux, or Windows. You can develop it on any of those operating systems. You can even run it on Raspberry Pi if you want to. It works everywhere. And because of that, Experience by Kentico as a product can be developed on Mac OS, whether that's Intel chips or M1, M2, M3 chips. Doesn't matter. I have a MacBook Air. I can do Experience by Kentico development there, and I can transition
Raspberry Pi.
No, I mean it's probably controlling a door.
You can do it there too. Yeah. And then transition over to Windows.
Sure.
And have people all in the same team collaborating together and not have to care what operating system, laptop technology, hardware technology they're using to develop a solution. It's seamless for anyone on that team.
Because our old Mac users know the pains of Parallels or VMware and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that kind of dovetails into just how portable, Experience by Kentico is quite a small deployment too. So, I mean, like you mentioned, you can deploy it anywhere, kiosks, things like that, digital signage inside of buildings. So it really kind of, again, this wouldn't have been possible on older versions or older technologies. So, that limitation or that barrier is pretty much non-existent at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I really love the commentary because, there's a couple different angles to it. Like, and I think one of the most important ones is talent acquisition, right? Not just for us as partners, other partners inside of the ecosystem or the community, but this story of barriers being broken down is also a story of how do we onboard new team members and make it successful for them to be able to drive value inside of our projects or inside of our applications. And like, this is the kind of stuff that's being taught to fresh talent too, right? Mm-hmm. And then likewise, I think it's really important for you guys have a rich history. You have 20 years of clients
building this stuff too.
So there's still a lot of people on some legacy tech that these barriers are very important for them to break down so that they can transition into the Experience by Kentico ecosystem, regardless of whether they're on 13 or 12, or we have some clients that are even older than that, right? Yeah. Which is fine. It's the way that it is. But this idea that like we're adopting these new standards, we're building it into the product philosophy, and that's helping us accelerate into just our day-to-day.
Yeah. And I love the way he says it, meeting development teams where they are. Like, we don't want to upend, and that's the same way we look at our, potential customers, is we don't want to upend what you might do on a day-to-day basis with, third parties or integrations. We want to complement it.
Yep.
We want to, work with that because, large corporations have teams, there could be 5 different teams that have 5 different stakes in this, this area of either content management or whatever it might be. And that is, another thing where you don't want to come in and say, well, you can't use this third party thing anymore. You have to use our stuff. You can, as opposed to, integrating with it and things like that.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I think it was you, Chris, or, well, I don't know who said it now, but you sort of made the joke. It's lightweight. It can be installed in kiosks and signage. And it does lead me to actually sort of a parallel path where, like, I think there's a really exciting roadmap feature that you guys are releasing here just in a little bit in the form of the headless API.
Yeah.
Right. This idea that headless is just a feature, I think is a really refreshing, pragmatic technology angle on, what we see inside of the market at large. Would you guys mind just tell us a little bit about the headless API, what's driven that? Where do we expect the value to be driven from this as a feature?
Yeah. So this feature comes from, I mentioned some of those like underlying product strategies or philosophies. This comes from that same place. So the idea that we are delivering capabilities without delivering complexity to both the marketer as the end user of the product and the developer, the one that's really driving the solution delivery. We want that to be applicable to all aspects of the product. And so if a developer is used to building a website with a headless CMS, it can be a great experience for them. It can also be a complex one.
Sure.
And we want to enable building a site headlessly without requiring the complexity that comes with that. Yeah. So it's if there is additional complexity there, the developer gets to opt into it. The team that's building the solution, they get to decide strategically, does this make sense for us, and opt into that at the pace and the level of complexity that they want. And so a developer could stand up an Experience by Kentico solution with just content management and allow marketers to start creating content day one. You don't have a website yet. You don't have emails designed. You don't have a website that's consuming this information over a headless API. You have none of that yet. You're just creating content, modeling that content, and really learning the product and learning what the needs are. And then the team gets to decide, all right, do we want to deliver this over a traditional ASP.NET Core website? Sure. Product enables that, has a great story for that. It's a great experience for developers and marketers. Do they want to deliver that content headlessly to a Next.js application or any other technology? It really doesn't matter. It's a JSON API. It's a GraphQL API. Deliver that content to whatever external consumer they want, but they get to opt into it. It's not a requirement. So that headless channel is a feature for us.
We're seeing that as a real big advantage for migrations too, from existing things where, maybe it needs a new look and feel, but you're happy with the content. Well, that's great, because now kind of the way with Experience by Kentico is you can, like you said, stand that up. You can, model your content. You can even start putting that all in there. You can even query it through the, channel or whatever it might be. Or like you said, the most common one would be to build out a web channel and then start referencing that content. But what this can actually enable is allow to running in, things in parallel instead of waiting for content, waiting for design, having to bring all this stuff together at one time. You could, do a whole bunch of content if the content strategy has been figured out, but the design hasn't, and then bring them together later. Or again, could be creating email channels. It could be creating, Next.js apps, etc.
And guess what? You get all these capabilities without the complexity. You are not required to stand up a Kubernetes cluster to get this application running. You don't have to have some bespoke incantation that your IT operations has to, recite in order to get this thing up and running. You can have it up and running quickly, and you can have a headless API and websites all within the same product. One ASP.NET Core application, one SQL Server database, and that's all you need. If you want those in Docker containers, fine. If you don't, fine. We don't care. It'll work.
Okay, so this is maybe a good transition for our last couple minutes here. Speaking of sorcery, can we talk about the SaaS version, the SaaS flavor,
Sure.
right? Because I think you're naturally sort of talking about what you guys have elected to do to create these deployment options, right? There's still this on-premise self-hosted model, which is in large part what you're talking about. But there's also clients and prospects that say, maybe we don't want to have to deal with that at all. And you now have a solution for that. With our last couple minutes, can we talk about that as well? Give us the rundown on the SaaS flavor of the product.
In the same way that we're meeting the developers where they are, we also want to meet the IT operations staff where they are, or maybe where there is no IT operations staff.
Yeah.
So
that's actually one of the bigger ones, is that they don't, right? They don't want to hire. The investment in an IT staff is overkill to manage a website, or, just much more expensive.
Yeah. And our product is sometimes implemented directly by customers. They have their own development teams, their own IT teams, and an application would be deployed within a private data center, or it could be deployed to the server sitting under someone's desk if they really wanted to. Yeah. I don't advise it, but hey, it's possible.
I've seen it.
So we've always been able to do things on that side of the spectrum. But what we haven't had in the past is a managed deployment environment for customers that either customers can use or our partners can use to host and run that application. And so what it does is it takes away some of the responsibility of getting that application out to test, UAT, production environments, managing the infrastructure or scaffolding out that infrastructure, and also writing what that deployment process looks like. Because some teams have lots of knowledge and skills today about DevOps practices.
Yep.
But there are some that just want to focus on the software application development, and they don't have the skill sets nor want to invest the time to learn those things. Well, you don't have to with Experience by Kentico. You can build the application, hand it off to us, and then we roll out that deployment for you.
Yeah.
I think one of our unique things is too that the product behaves ideally in both scenarios, whether, it could be in a very complex DevOps scenario with a giant IT team, or it could be just publishing into the beginning of a SaaS, or even, an app service or something like that, that the software, the development lifecycle, all that kind of stuff is identical. It only comes down to, again, deployment options and meeting people where they are, as opposed to saying you have to do it like this.
Yeah.
We have some customers that are really mature in terms of their technical infrastructure knowledge of hosting and running a web application. And for them, setting up a CI/CD pipeline, deploying out an application, and also knowing how much to allocate for infrastructure and manage that infrastructure, it's no problem.
Right.
And for them, maybe they don't need a SaaS environment coming from a vendor like us. But for the ones that don't have that knowledge and skill set, we can take care of that for them so that it's not a limitation on them getting value out of our product. So we have blue-green deployments in production. We have surfaced resource usage logs and graphs and event and error logs in the dashboard, in the portal, where customers can deploy their application.
That's backup, restore, retention.
Yep.
Like those are all the things we thought of that's part of the base package, instead of, like you said, if you deploy something in your own Azure environment, it's not going to automatically back up. It's not going to kind of take some of those things that industry professionals would take as you know, what a baseline deployment would look like.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that we, are looking to take off people's plates or off their mind if they don't have that kind of expertise.
Yeah.
Developers might hear this and be a little concerned. I'm giving you control over something. What happens if it doesn't work out, or I'm stuck now with you? No, the product is the same product, whether it's being deployed in your infrastructure, your public or private cloud, or our SaaS environment. And you can transition between the two with just configuration changes. So if you start out in a private data center and you want to come to SaaS, no problem. Or an application that's been running for a year, no problem. We can get you from point A to point B. If you start out in SaaS but have some compliance requirement that's unique to you that you found out about, don't worry. We can get you out of SaaS and into public cloud or private data center if you need to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think these are all great philosophies. They don't eliminate risk, but they help mitigate it substantially when it comes to managing, sizing infrastructure and deployment practices.
And it feeds
which I think is just
right into the title of dexterity to me. Like that's the agility or the
Thanks, Chris.
see?
Right.
But I mean, that's kind of what I was saying about before about Kentico never getting in my way when I was always, and there's more than one way to solve a problem usually. And that again, following in what the billions of dollars and hundreds, thousands of hours Microsoft has come up with this framework. We're not looking to upend any of that. We're going to build on top of that strong foundation and, utilize it.
That's great. That's great. Well, guys, this has been a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate you taking some time to chat with me about Kentico, modern technology practices, really surfacing this content for listeners. I think it's all valuable, and understanding the Kentico trajectory, understanding the technology that powers it, I think is just it's just so important to being successful. So really appreciate you guys taking the time to join the episode here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah. To all our listeners, thanks so much, and we'll catch you on the next one.